You might head online to find a couple of plants to brighten up your living room. You search for easy care houseplants and get a bunch of lists promising indestructible green gems. You might find ferns, palms, spring of pearls, prayer plants. The problem is that half of these will have you spiralling by the end of the week, especially the prayer plant. That thing's definitely not easy. Most of these lists are just a random selection of whatever's on sale, rebranded as low maintenance because, well, that's what gets clicks. One site had 12 pages of so-called easy care plants. That's not a curated list, that's just their entire stock. This video is different though. I've got well over 200 houseplants and I can tell you exactly which ones are high maintenance nightmares and which ones genuinely thrive on being ignored. Well, mostly ignored. They do still need some water. Now you might be thinking, oh no, not a Calathea, and normally I'd agree with you. I've had my fair share of drama with them. In fact, I bought 3 different ones at the same time and this is the only one still alive. And when I say alive, I don't mean technically still green, I mean actually thriving. Which is saying something because the other 2 practically disintegrated within weeks. I mean, look at this not so cheeky chappy. Spider mites moved in, leaves curled up in protest, and by the end I was left with a graveyard in a pot. But this one is different. This is the Calathea orbifolia. It's got big beautiful leaves with a kind of silver pattern that looks like it's been painted on. It doesn't throw tantrums if you breathe near it, it just quietly gets on with it as long as you follow a couple of simple rules, which is first, try not to let the soil dry out completely, it prefers to stay evenly moist. And second, much like most Calatheas, they're not keen on direct sun. Mine lives in the conservatory, but it's a good 2 meters away from the window with a big monstera above giving it some gentle shade. The light's still bright, but it's never harsh. And I've got mine on a little plant stand that I picked up from TK Maxx, so it's off the floor and gets a bit more airflow. Might just be me, but it seems happier that way. It's easy, it's elegant and doesn't need constant fussing. I still check for spider bites now and then because, well, Calathea. But this one's been solid. This guy and I didn't get off to the best start. When I first brought him home, he looked stunning with lovely glossy leaves and graceful arching branches. But within a few weeks, he started dropping leaves like it was autumn. I panicked and stupidly tried to fix it by watering more, which of course made it worse. The issue was I'd stuck him in a gloomy corner a mile from any natural light and kept the soil constantly soggy. Classic noob move. But once I actually gave him what he needed, which was bright light and the occasional chance to dry out, he completely turned around. Now he's one of the easiest plants I own. This is Ficus benjamina by the way, and he lives right up against the window where he gets loads of sun on his back and he's not remotely fussy anymore. If I forget to water him for a week or 2, he doesn't really bat an eyelid. He's totally fine with the soil drying out between waterings, which makes him perfect if you're not exactly on top of your plant care routine. He doesn't need pruning too because he naturally branches out into this tree-like shape. Every now and then though, I do rotate the pot to keep him even, but that's about it. You always find snake plants on easy care lists and for once they've earned their place. I've got 3 types, the classic green upright one, the yellow-edged variegated version, and one called Star Canyon Granite that looks like it belongs on another planet. But they all behave the same and are totally reliable. They can handle neglect without throwing a tantrum. I've gone weeks without watering and they just carry on. You don't need to prune them or fiddle about and I've never had a pest on either. They often get called low light plants and while they can tolerate lower light, they do so much better with some sun. This one here is stuck behind a wall and hardly gets any light and he's just sitting there not doing much. But the one next to the living room door, which basks in full afternoon sun, is constantly pushing out new growth. Philodendrons are meant to be tough, that's the reputation anyway, but if you see my video about plants I regret buying, then you'll know there's quite a few that have let me down. Especially this one. Ugh. Problems like this are actually in my free plant problems troubleshooting handbook that you can nab in the description. It's handy to have on your phone for when something untoward happens with one of your plants. Now Philodendron scandens is one of the few I'd actually recommend. He's not the showy type, he doesn't do the flash cards and designer clothes. His whole getup is a bit plain really. Simple green hearts, nothing that's going to stop you in your tracks, but he grows like mad and does exactly what you want a trailing plant to do. He's been living high up on my shelf above my TV in my living room, and he's starting to take over a bit, but in the best possible way. I've pinned one stem up so it trails across the wall, although I'm not really sure how that's going to end, but it'll be interesting to find out anyway, and the rest of him is cascading around the pot. It's that fast, reliable growth that makes him a keeper. You don't have to beg him to grow. You give him a decent spot with a decent amount of light and you just get on with it. And he doesn't sulk when you forget to water him for a bit, and he definitely doesn't need misting or repotting every 5 minutes or any of that other nonsense. Even when he does start to look a bit tangled or leggy, a quick trim sorts him right out. You can root the cuttings in water and have a brand new plant ready in a couple of weeks. Now, don't let anyone fool you into thinking Alocasias are easy going, because they're not. For the average Joe who doesn't have the time to dedicate, say, 20 hours a week on keeping them from falling apart, I'd leave well alone. In fact, I gave my dad a Friday to look after a little while ago with a grow light and everything, and a few months later it was nowhere to be seen. "Where is it?" I asked. "Oh, that thing was a nightmare," was the response. Sounds about right. But there is one, touch wood, that hasn't given me too much grief. Well, hardly any grief actually, and that's a major surprise. The Alocasia platinum. It's got loads of leaves, which is rare for an Alocasia, and he just generally looks kinda healthy. The light isn't great, so he's clearly not fussy about that, and I tend to water more or less every weekend, and he seems fairly content by that too. And he's a looker too. I don't think the camera does it any justice, but the colours of the leaves are just mwah. Cacti scare a lot of people. They either assume they're impossible to keep alive, or they completely ignore them and wonder why they've turned to dust. But they're some of the easiest plants you can own, especially this one, the Echinopsis. It looks like a classic cartoon cactus, and I think that's why I like him. He's chunky, he's ribbed and caked in spikes, ready to give you a warning if you get too close. Now, there are two basic rules. First, give him lots of sun. Stick him in the sunniest window and leave him there. If he doesn't get enough light, he'll start to stretch and lean, and he won't be the same plant ever again. And second, water properly, but only when he actually wants it. In summer, that's roughly every 2 weeks for my climate, which is temperate. Let the soil dry out completely in between and give it a proper soak when you do water. And in winter, stop watering completely. I know it feels wrong, but trust me, he's asleep and he doesn't want to be disturbed. As long as you don't break either of those rules, he will live for years and do exactly what you want him to do, which is pretty much nothing. She's not the flashiest plant in the room, but Mrs. Aglaonema is one quietly getting on with things while others are falling apart. I've had a few over the years and they've all been incredibly steady, but the tigres is the most reliable. She doesn't sulk if you miss a watering, and she doesn't seem to mind too much if you miss the fertiliser every now and then. She'll put up with a whole range of conditions that will send other plants spiralling. The real strength of Mrs. Aglaonema is her adaptability. She can handle lower light, which makes her perfect for those spots that aren't right by a window. She does get better with brighter light, but even in shadier corners she'll carry on. Her watering needs are just as straightforward. Let the soil dry out halfway, then water thoroughly. Simples. If you forget for a few days, she won't hold it against you. She's not trying to catch you out or drop leaves the minute you slip up. And she's also got decent pest resistance. I've never had spider mites or anything else nasty on mine, which is a relief when you've got a bigger collection. And she doesn't outgrow her pot every 5 minutes either. You can leave her alone for a good while before she needs repotting. She might look a bit more delicate than the classic golden pothos, but enjoy is just as tough. These crisp white and green leaves might make her look a bit high maintenance, but she's not. She's one of the easiest plants in my collection. I've got her growing in my living room and she's been really steady. The growth is slower than your typical pothos, but in my book that's no real bad thing. She's nice and compact, she's very neat, and she doesn't sprawl all over the place the moment you turn your back. Like other pothos, she doesn't need constant attention. The soil can dry out almost completely before she needs watering, and even then she'll give you a warning. She might curl her leaves a bit, but as soon as she gets a drink, she bounces right back. She prefers bright light, especially to keep the variegation strong. If she's in a darker spot, the white can fade and she might start reverting to greener growth. There's no pests, no crispy tips and no tantrums, just slow, steady growth and those pretty pattern leaves that brighten up any corner. I bought this one on a whim, fully expecting it to be a disaster. Stromanthe triostar has that look about her. Dramatic leaves, bit of pink variegation, the kind of plant that seems like she'll throw a tantrum the moment you turn your back. So I gave her a month. But 6 months later, she's still here. She lives in my conservatory a couple of metres from the window, which is bright but certainly no direct sun. She likes a bit of moisture in the soil, so I don't let her dry out completely, but I also don't water to a schedule. I just check the top inch of soil and only water when it feels dry. Seems to suit her just fine. Maybe I got lucky with this one, or maybe she's tougher than people give her credit for. She was never meant to be a long-term resident, but she's more than earned her place now. If you give her the right conditions, she'll reward you with bold foliage that really stands out without needing constant attention. You really can't go wrong with a Jade plant, any variety. They're all solid and they're all easy. She's a classic for a reason. Thick glossy leaves, chunky stems, slow but steady growth. She's not really demanding, she just wants a sunny spot and to be left alone most of the time. I keep mine in the brightest window I've got. She absolutely thrives with direct sun, and unlike fussier plants, she won't complain about it. In fact, if you see the edges of the leaves turning a bit purple, then that's just a sign she's getting plenty of light. Same with the white spots you sometimes see on the surface of the leaves. It's just mineral residue, not a pest or a problem, so you can wipe it off or just completely ignore it. Watering is simple, let the soil dry out completely before you do anything. In winter I barely water at all. She stores plenty of moisture in those big fat leaves, so you're much more likely to overwater than underwater. She's also incredibly easy to prune. If she's getting leggy or you want to shape her a bit, just snip a stem. Spider plants have a reputation for being easy, but I've always found them to be a bit of a nightmare. The roots get all spaghettified fast, and if you let the soil dry out even slightly, the leaves let you know. I tried filtered water, changing the soil, even misting, and none of it worked. They always ended up looking scruffy. But then I changed the way I grow them and completely turned things around. No more brown tips, just healthy, glossy growth with minimal effort. It's a really simple change, but it's made spider plants genuinely easy. I'll show you exactly what I did in this video here, so make sure you watch it next, and I'll see you there.